There is an old Zen story I want you to hold in your mind while we talk. Not because it is mystical, not because it is perfect, but because once you understand it, you may never look at discipline the same way again. In a small temple in Kyoto, there was a monk whose job was to sweep the stone path before morning meditation every day, before the bell, before the tea, before the other monks woke up and complained about the cold. He swept the same path, in the same order, with the same broom, from the gate to the steps, from the steps to the garden, from the garden to the hall. People said he had done it for decades. Snow, rain, fever, grief, visitors, war, festivals, funerals, harvest, storms. He swept. One morning, a young monk finally asked him the question everybody wanted to ask. How do you never miss? The old monk kept sweeping. He did not look up right away. Then he said something that sounds almost too simple to matter. I never decide again.
Now, if you heard that and thought, that's it? Good. Stay with me. Because inside that sentence is a system so quiet, so unglamorous, and so relentless that most people will run from it without ever realizing they ran. We are going to talk about a kind of discipline that is scarier than waking up at 4 a.m., scarier than cold plunges, scarier than marathon training, fasting, silence retreats, or deleting social media. Is the discipline of not breaking the thread. In Zen, there is a word for this, gyoji, continuous practice, practice without gaps. Not practice when you feel inspired, not practice when life is calm and your calendar is color-coded and your sleep was perfect and Mercury is behaving itself. Practice as a living line that continues through weather, mood, illness, travel, heartbreak, boredom, victory, and ordinary Tuesdays. And here is the uncomfortable truth at the center of this video. Most people do not fail because they lack information. You already know what to do. You know you should write, train, meditate, study, save money, stretch, call your mother, eat like an adult, go to bed. You know.
Most people fail because every day they reopen a negotiation that should have been closed a long time ago. Should I do it today? What time? How long? Am I in the mood? Is it worth it? Can I make up for it tomorrow? What if I miss one day? What if I do a smaller version? What if nobody notices? That little courtroom in your head is where consistency goes to die. The Zen system we're talking about is not about becoming harder. It is about removing the need to be heroic. It is about building a life where the right action happens with the same inevitability as breathing, brushing your teeth, or reaching for your phone in the morning. Except this time, the automatic thing is the thing that actually builds you. Let me ask you something before we go deeper. Have you ever noticed that the moment you decide, I'm going to get serious, your life immediately becomes more dramatic? You make the plan, you buy the notebook, you tell yourself this time is different. Maybe you even announce it. New program, new streak, new era, day 1. And for 3 days, maybe 8, maybe 17, you are unstoppable. Then one night you stay up too late, or your kid gets sick, or work explodes, or you travel, or it rains in a way that personally offends you. And the perfect plan, the one that depended on you being a slightly better human than you have ever been, collapses. Then comes the real damage. Not the missed day, the story after the missed day. See, I always do this. I'm just not disciplined. I knew I wouldn't stick with it. I'll restart Monday. Monday, the national holiday of people who almost changed. The old monk would probably smile at that. Not cruelly, just the way you smile at someone carrying water in a bucket with a hole in it and wondering why their arms are tired. Because the problem was never effort. The problem was the gap.
A gap is not just a day off. A gap is a place where your identity leaks out. That is why gyoji matters. Continuous practice does not mean never rest. It does not mean grind yourself into dust and call it enlightenment. It means the thread remains unbroken, even when the shape of the practice changes. If you cannot sit for 40 minutes, you sit for 1. If you cannot run 5 miles, you put on your shoes and walk to the corner. If you cannot write the chapter, you write one true sentence. If you are sick, you do the smallest version that still says, "This is who I am."
The length can change. The intensity can change. The continuity cannot. That is the first door, and once you walk through it, the whole house looks different. Because now, discipline is no longer about intensity, it is about identity. This is where people get uncomfortable, so let's go slowly. Most of us were taught that discipline is a battle between the good you and the bad you. The disciplined angel on one shoulder, the snack-eating goblin on the other. If the angel wins enough times, you become a new person. But Zen would say, you have it backwards. You do not become consistent by winning enough battles. You win more battles when you stop declaring war on yourself. Identity-based discipline means you stop acting like a person who is trying to do something and start acting from the identity of someone for whom this is normal. Not, I'm trying to write, I'm a writer. Not, I'm attempting to meditate, I sit. Not, I'm working on being consistent, I keep my word to myself. Now, before this turns into a motivational poster with a mountain in the background, let me be clear. Saying I am a writer does not magically produce chapters. This is not manifestation cosplay. Identity is not a slogan. Identity is evidence.
Every time you keep a small promise, you cast a vote for the kind of person you believe you are. Every time you break that promise and then lie about it, minimize it, or hide from it, you cast a vote too. The scary thing is that your brain is counting, not morally, mechanically. It is always asking, what are we? What do we do here? What happens next? And if the answer, day after day, is we negotiate, we delay, we quit, and then make a dramatic comeback, then inconsistency becomes familiar. It becomes home. Gyoji interrupts that. It says, we are the kind of person who returns. Return is the whole thing. Not never falling, returning, quickly, without the opera. The old monk swept because sweeping was no longer a decision. It was the shape of his morning. The identity was not, I am amazing. It was quieter than that. This is what happens before the bell. Imagine what would change in your life if just one area became that unquestionable. Not impressive, unquestionable. There is a big difference. Impressive is doing a 2-hour workout and posting the sweat selfie. Unquestionable is training at 6:30, because at 6:30 you train, and the part of you that wants to debate has learned it will not be fed.
Which brings us to one of the most practical pieces of the Zen system: fixed schedules. A fixed schedule sounds boring until you realize it is actually a mercy. Every unscheduled commitment carries a hidden tax. You pay it in decision-making. You pay it in delay. You pay it in the little mental search for the right time, which somehow never appears because life is rude and evenings are where good intentions go to be buried under email. A non-negotiable practice time closes the gap before it opens. If meditation is at 6:10, it is at 6:10. Not sometime before work, not after coffee if I have time, not when I feel centered, which, let's be honest, for most of us means never or only during arguments. The time is not chosen because it is perfect. It is chosen because it is fixed. Fixed is what makes it survivable. Think of a train. A train does not leave when the conductor feels aligned. It leaves at 7:04. That is why people build their lives around it.
That is why it can carry thousands of people without negotiating with each one. You need parts of your life to run like that train. And no, you do not need to schedule every minute like a productivity robot with a color-coded soul. You need 1 or 2 anchors that do not move when your mood changes. For the monk, it was before the bell. For you, maybe it is the first 10 minutes after you wake. Maybe lunch. Maybe the moment the kids finally sleep. Maybe right after work, before the couch develops gravity.
The specific hour matters less than this. When the time arrives, the debate does not. You might be thinking, but my life is unpredictable. Good, mine too. Everyone's is. That is exactly why the anchor matters. If your practice only exists in predictable conditions, then your growth depends on life behaving. Life has never once agreed to behave. The fixed schedule is not there because your days are calm. It is there because they are not. Now let's talk about the routine itself, because this is where the system becomes almost unfairly powerful. One consistent routine. Same actions, same order, same beginning. Why? Because the beginning of a habit is where most of the friction lives. Once you are writing, writing is usually fine. Once you are moving, moving is usually fine. Once you are sitting, the urge to jump up loses some of its teeth. The battlefield is the threshold. So you make the threshold identical. Same place, same trigger, same first step. You do not ask, what should I do first? You already know. The answer was pre-installed. The monk did not wander around the temple each morning thinking, should I begin near the maple today? Should I sweep counterclockwise for creativity? He began where he always began. That sameness was not a prison. It was freedom from negotiation.
This is deeply underrated. We romanticize variety. We want discipline to feel fresh, inspired, cinematic. But freshness is expensive. Sameness is renewable. A simple routine repeated in the same order becomes a runway. You touch the first domino and the rest begin to fall. Wake, water, mat, sit, bell, begin. Or shoes, door, left at the gate, 10 minutes, no podcast until after. Or laptop open, document named, timer set, 1 ugly paragraph, then coffee tastes like coffee instead of avoidance. It is almost embarrassing how effective this is. We want transformation to feel like a thunderbolt. Often, it feels like placing the same stone in the same place every morning until one day you realize you have built a wall. But here is the twist. The routine is not meant to make you robotic. It is meant to protect what is human in you. When the basic actions are automatic, your energy is no longer burned on logistics. You can bring your actual presence to the practice. The monk was not thinking about the broom. He was in the morning. He heard the birds. He felt the cold. He noticed the mind complaining and swept anyway. The routine carries you so that you can be awake inside it. Now, I promised you we would come back to the old monk and the question everyone avoids. What happened when life got truly hard? Because if gyoji only works on pleasant days, it is decoration. There is a version of the story where the monk's wife died before he entered the temple. In another version, it was his younger brother. In another, there is no death at all, only a long illness that hollowed him out one winter. Zen stories are slippery like that. They care less about biography than about the blade hidden inside.
So imagine the hardest version. The temple bell rings before dawn. The snow has fallen all night. The path is buried. And the old monk wakes with grief sitting on his chest like a stone. Not poetic grief, the kind that makes tea taste like metal and turns the body into wet laundry. He does not want to sweep. This matters. He is not a machine. He is not enlightened in the cartoon sense where nothing touches him. He wants to stay in bed. He wants the world to stop asking things from him. He wants one day where the thread can break and everyone will understand. And everyone would understand. That is the dangerous part. The world is very compassionate about your excuses when they are good ones. If you are sick, people say rest. If you are grieving, people say take time. If you are traveling, people say enjoy yourself. And they are not wrong. But compassion can become a beautifully furnished room where your future self sits alone, waiting for you to come back. So what does he do? He does not perform heroics. He does not clear the entire path to prove grief cannot touch him. He opens the door. He takes the broom. He sweeps one clean line through the snow, from the gate to the first stone. Then he bows to the path. And that is enough. The thread is unbroken. This is continuity over perfection, and it may be the most important sentence in this whole video. A broken, perfect streak is still better than never starting, yes, but a flexible, unbroken thread is stronger than both. Most people build practices that only survive at full volume, full workout or nothing, full writing session or nothing, full meditation or nothing. Then life turns the volume down, and because they cannot do the masterpiece version, they do the absence version.
The Zen System says, reduce the form, never abandon the relationship. If you are ill, you do the sick day version. If you are traveling, you do the hotel room version. If you are exhausted, you do the 2-minute version. If you are heartbroken, you do the version that can be done while crying. This is not lowering standards, it is refusing to let circumstances become the author of your identity. Let me make this concrete. Your practice has 3 sizes. The full size for normal days, the small size for crowded days, the emergency size for days when life has punched you in the mouth. The emergency size should be almost laughably small, so small your resistance feels silly objecting. 1 push-up, 1 sentence, 1 breath with both feet on the floor. Open the document, put on the shoes, touch the instrument, bow. You are not doing it for the result that day. You are doing it so tomorrow does not begin with a gap. And this is where people misunderstand never miss. The point is not to become terrified of imperfection. The point is to stop turning one missed day into a disappearance. If you miss, you return, fast, clean, without writing a 3-act tragedy about it. Miss once? Human. Miss and then hide for 6 months? That is identity damage. The monk's 1 line of snow is a callback for you. Remember it the next time your perfect plan gets body slammed by reality. You do not need to clear the whole path. You need 1 visible line that proves you still live here.
Now, if you are listening carefully, you might have a question forming. Okay, but how do I know what the small version is in the moment? When I'm tired or stressed, I'm not exactly a wise Zen elder. I'm more like a raccoon in a dumpster. Fair. Extremely fair. That is why the system includes pre-solved obstacles. You do not wait for the obstacle to arrive and then negotiate with it while it is holding a knife. You decide your responses in advance when you are calm. Zen temples do this without calling it productivity. Rain is not a surprise in Kyoto. Snow is not a betrayal. There are indoor paths, shorter forms, work rotations, simpler meals, ways to continue. The practice is woven into the reality of being human, not into the fantasy of ideal conditions. You need your own version. If I wake up late, then I do the 7-minute version, not 0. If I travel, then I walk after breakfast wherever I am. If the gym is closed, then the living room becomes the gym. If I cannot focus, then I write badly for 10 minutes on purpose. If I am sick, then my practice is 1 conscious breath and 1 sentence in my journal, still here. If friends invite me out on a training night, then I train before or move the session, but I do not pretend the day vanished. If I feel the urge to announce a huge reinvention, then I shrink it until it can survive February. Notice the structure. If this happens, then I do that. It sounds simple because it is, but simple is not the same as easy. Most people would rather keep suffering than become this clear, because clarity removes the hiding places.
A pre-solved obstacle is a kindness to your future self. It says, I know you. I know you will be dramatic when you are tired. I know you will suddenly believe tomorrow is a magical land with infinite time. So I am leaving instructions. You are not being rigid. You are being rescued in advance. And this is also where public declarations come in. Carefully. Public commitment can be powerful. Telling people, I am doing this every day for a year, can create accountability. It can make quitting more expensive. It can recruit witnesses. When done well, it adds weight to your word. But there is a trap, and you have probably seen it. Maybe you have been it. Sometimes the announcement gives you just enough reward to replace the action. You post the plan, people cheer, you get a little hit of identity without paying the cost. I'm the kind of person who does hard things, your brain purrs, while the actual hard thing remains undone.
The declaration becomes dessert before dinner. So use public declarations like salt, not like the meal. Tell one person who will actually look you in the eye. Tell a small group that expects evidence. Make the commitment specific and modest enough to survive reality. Do not announce the statue you will become. Announce the brick you will lay today and tomorrow. I sit every morning at 6:10 for 10 minutes. If I travel, I sit wherever I am. If I miss, I tell you the same day. That is different from new year, new monk mode, massive transformation incoming. One creates accountability, the other creates applause for a ghost.
The deeper purpose of a public declaration is not shame, it is relationship. You are letting another person hold a mirror. You are saying, if I disappear, ask me where I went. That can be frightening because many of us secretly depend on the freedom to vanish. Gyoji removes the vanishing. Are you beginning to see why I called this the scariest discipline? It is not scary because it hurts. Lots of things hurt. People love pain if it comes with music and a before and after photo. It is scary because it leaves no audience, no spectacle, no dramatic collapse and comeback. Just you keeping a small promise on an ordinary day long after the excitement has gone home. The scariest discipline is the one that makes you honest. It asks, who are you when nobody claps? Who are you when the results are invisible? Who are you when the practice is boring and there is no sign yet that it is working? That is the monastery, not the robes, not the incense, the repeated return. Now let's go into the machinery under all this, habit automatization. There is a point, if you repeat an action enough in the same context, where it stops requiring the same amount of will. Not zero will, less. At first, practice feels like pushing a car uphill. Every inch is negotiation. Then slowly, the brain begins to recognize the pattern. Context cue, action, reward. Shoes, door, movement. Bell, cushion, breath. Coffee, chair, page.
The behavior moves from should we toward we do. This is why the early days matter so much and why people waste them chasing intensity. In the beginning, you are not primarily building the skill. You are teaching your nervous system the sequence. You are laying rails. That is also why changing everything at once fails. Too many new behaviors means too many decisions, too much friction, too many places for the old self to re-enter and take the wheel. You want repetition so regular it becomes almost dull. Dull is underrated. Dull is where roots grow. Think about washing your hands. You do not stand at the sink every morning whispering affirmations to activate your hygiene identity. You just wash them. That level of normalcy is the goal. Can you imagine your chosen practice becoming that normal? Not forced, not impressive, normal. This is the quiet miracle. One day you realize you did the thing before the resistance finished loading. You were already on the mat, already at the desk, already outside. The old debate still spoke, but from farther away, like a neighbor yelling from another building. That distance is earned. And here's the surprising part. Automaticity does not mean the practice becomes dead. It means the doorway becomes smooth. What happens after you enter can still be alive, messy, creative, devotional, frustrating, beautiful. The monk's sweeping may have become automatic in form, but snow is different every morning. Light is different. His body is different. The mind arrives with new weather. The repetition is not there to eliminate life. It is there to give life a place to happen.
That distinction matters because some people reject routine out of fear it will flatten them. They think if they become consistent, they will lose spontaneity, edge, mystery. Usually, the opposite happens. When you stop spending your energy deciding whether to practice, you have more energy for depth. The container is steady, so the content can move. A river needs banks. Banks are not the enemy of water. Without them, water becomes a puddle and calls itself free. Now let's talk about the transformation underneath the transformation. At some point, identity-based discipline stops being a strategy and becomes a fact. You are no longer trying to be consistent. You are a person who returns. That may sound small, but it changes how you interpret everything. A hard day is no longer evidence that you are failing. It is just weather. A missed morning is no longer a verdict. It is an interruption. Slow progress is no longer humiliation. It is the speed of roots. You stop asking, is this working, every 5 minutes. You start asking, am I keeping the threat? That question is much more useful. Because many good practices take longer than our impatience. Writing looks useless before it looks inevitable. Training feels pointless before the body changes. Meditation can feel like sitting in a room with a drunk monkey, before one day the monkey is still drunk, but you are less interested in its opinions. If you judge by early results, you will abandon things right before the compound interest wakes up. Gyoji gives time a chance, and time, given consistency, is brutal in your favor. Not brutal like punishment, brutal like erosion. A small daily action presses against the mountain of your old identity again and again. The mountain looks unchanged for a long while. Then one day a crack appears. Then a stone falls. Then people say, "Wow, you're so disciplined now," as if it happened in a weekend. You know the truth. It happened on all the days nobody saw. Let me bring this out of the temple and into your actual life. Maybe your practice is not meditation. Maybe it is making your bed like someone who respects the day. Maybe it is cooking at home so your future body is not held hostage by your present mood. Maybe it is practicing an instrument while your neighbors learn to forgive you. Maybe it is writing the book you keep mentioning at parties. Maybe it is studying for the exam that could change your family's options. Maybe it is walking so your knees still belong to you in 20 years. Maybe it is praying. Maybe it is not drinking. Maybe it is answering messages like a person instead of a haunted notification machine. The form matters less than the relationship. Choose one practice, not 7, one. Make it small enough to continue. Fix it to a time. Give it an order. Create the travel version, the sick version, the heartbreak version. Tell one person who will not let you disappear. Then repeat until the action starts carrying some of its own weight.
And when you miss, because you will, because you are a human being and not a screenshot, return before the story grows teeth. That is the rule. Return before the story grows teeth. The story will say, you ruined it. Return and prove it wrong. The story will say, you need a fresh start. Return and make it continuous. The story will say, people like you don't finish things. Return one time, then again, and let the evidence pile up. You do not have to win an argument with the old identity. You just have to outlast it. There is another layer here, and I want to touch it gently because it can sound harsh if you rush it. Sometimes we do not actually want consistency. We want the feeling of becoming without the embarrassment of practice. Consistency is embarrassing in the beginning. Your early work is bad. Your body is slow. Your mind is noisy. Your discipline is visible to almost no one and impressive to absolutely no one. You are laying bricks in the dark. But this embarrassment is the toll gate to a new life. Most people turn around there. They choose the clean dignity of potential over the muddy reality of repetition. They would rather be the person who could be great than the person seen practicing badly at 6:10 a.m.
Zen is not impressed by potential. Zen is interested in the broom. That is why the old monk's answer, "I never decide again," is so devastating. It means the drama is over. Not the feeling of drama, the authority of drama. Feelings still arrive. Boredom still arrives. Resistance still arrives wearing 50 different coats. But they are no longer in charge of the schedule. You can feel unmotivated and still begin. You can feel afraid and still begin. You can feel uninspired, underslept, overworked, underappreciated, and still do the small version that keeps the thread alive. That is not suppression. That is leadership. You are not crushing the part of you that resists. You are simply no longer letting it drive. Now, let me answer the question I opened earlier in a slightly different way. The young monk asked, "How do you never miss?" But maybe the real question underneath was, how do I become someone I can trust? Because that is what consistency is really about. Not productivity, not optimization, trust. If you tell yourself you will do something and then repeatedly abandon yourself, a part of you stops believing your words. You become a manager with no credibility. Every new plan sounds like a speech from a leader who has promised too much before. But when you keep small promises, something heals. Not all at once, quietly. You begin to feel a kind of inner reliability. You say you will sit, and you sit. You say you will write one page, and one page exists. You say you will walk after dinner, and there you are, under the sky,
walking like a person whose word has a body.
That trust bleeds into everything. You become less afraid of big commitments because you know what you are like when things get boring. You become less seduced by quick fixes because you have seen what repetition can do. You become less performative because the real proof is private. This is why I think consistency is spiritual, even if you never use that word. It brings your inner life and outer actions closer together. Less gap between what you say and what you do. Less gap between who you admire and who you are practicing to become. Less gap. Gyoji. Now, a few important cautions, because a system like this can be twisted into something ugly if you bring your old punishment habits with you. Continuity is not self-hatred with a calendar. If your consistency requires you to ignore injury, sickness, grief, or basic humanity, that is not discipline, that is fear wearing a uniform. The emergency version exists precisely so you do not confuse commitment with cruelty. Fixed schedules are not an excuse to become rigid with other people. The point is not to control life. The point is to stop leaking energy into decisions that should have been settled. If someone you love needs you, love them, then return to the thread. The thread is not a tyrant, it is a home. Public declarations are not invitations for shame. If the people around you use your missed day to mock you, they are not accountability partners. They are just hecklers with access. Choose witnesses who want you free, not embarrassed.
And automatization is not the same as numbness. The goal is not to sleepwalk through a perfect routine. The goal is to make the doorway easy enough that you can be awake inside the practice. Hold those distinctions and the system stays clean. Let's gather the pieces now, not as a checklist, but as one movement. You choose a practice that matters, not because it looks good, but because a life without it keeps costing you something. You stop negotiating with the identity of a person who tries. You begin collecting evidence that you are someone who returns. You fix the practice to a time because a floating intention is usually a funeral announcement. You repeat the same simple routine in the same order because sameness at the doorway creates freedom inside the room. You protect continuity over perfection, so a bad day becomes a smaller practice, not a disappearance. You pre-solve the obvious obstacles because future you deserves better than being ambushed by rain. You use public commitment carefully, letting honest witnesses make quitting a little harder and hiding a little less attractive. You repeat until repetition becomes automation, until the body knows the way before the mind finishes complaining. And slowly, almost without noticing, you become different. Not because one day was heroic, but because the thread held. The old monk, near the end of his life, was asked by another young person. There is always another young person, thank goodness. What is the secret to enlightenment?
Depending on who tells the story, he laughed or coughed or kept sweeping. But the answer in the version I love is this. When it snows, sweep snow. When it rains, sweep rain. When you are tired, sweep slowly. When you are sad, sweep gently. When you do not want to sweep, sweep once and bow. I think about that more often than I want to admit. When it snows, sweep snow. Not when it is convenient, not when the path is already clear, not when someone is watching, not when the broom is new and your hands feel strong. When it snows. Your life will snow. It will rain inside and outside. There will be seasons when the practice feels meaningless, when nobody notices, when the results are slow enough to insult your ambition. There will be days you are convinced the thread is already broken beyond repair. It is not. Pick up the broom, sweep one line, bow, come back tomorrow. That is not the sexy answer. It is the one that works. So here is your invitation, and I mean it as an invitation, not a command from some imaginary productivity police.
Before this video ends, choose the one practice. Make it almost too small. Decide when it happens. Decide the first 3 actions in order. Decide the emergency version for the worst day you can imagine. Write one if-then for the obstacle that always takes you out. Tell one human being who loves you enough to ask, "Did you return?" Then start. Not dramatically, quietly, like someone laying the first stone of a path they intend to walk for years. And if you miss, do not disappear. Do not make speeches. Do not wait for Monday. Return before the story grows teeth. Because the scariest discipline is not the one that hurts the most. It is the one that asks you to become someone you can trust on an ordinary day. If this stirred something in you, don't just let it fade into the feed. Like this video if it earned it, subscribe for more deep dives like this, and comment one word, continuity, along with the practice you're choosing. Not the perfect one, the one you'll keep when it snows. And if you want the next piece of this puzzle, watch the video on your screen now, because consistency is only the beginning. What it turns you into is the real story. Until then, keep the thread.